Hola, mi amigos. Let me the completely Spanish fluent, horrible debate instructor. So, today I'm going to be going over rebuttals. So, if you are unaware, a rebuttal is the 4-minute constructive for second speakers. Okay, so this is mainly for second speakers. First speakers, if you want to watch this, you can figure out how it's structured so you can understand how to take notes better, because it is important to take notes. So, rebuttal, I can't really give a lot of advice for because it changes constantly. Okay, rebuttal is 100%, well, not 100%, it is mainly impromptu. Okay, you are going off the script for rebuttal. You're not going to have a canned, a canned is like a pre-constructed speech. So you're not going to have a canned speech with you just, reading the words off. No, no, no. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating the argument on the fly. And so the reason that rebuttals are so difficult for new people is because they don't know how to structure them. They don't know what to look for. And the reason I've spent so much time, absurd amounts of time, going over what a warrant is, going over what a claim is, going over what an impact is, and how to identify them, is because that is exactly what a rebuttal has to do. So, when structuring your rebuttal, you need to. So typically, the way I do it is this: before going into a debate round, I take my paper, because I always took notes on an actual legal pad, like pen and paper. And so rather than a computer, simply because it makes you look more professional as you stand up, it makes you look better to have paper in front of you rather than a computer. But what I would do is I would write out framework, boom, definitions, boom, leave a couple spaces, okay? Then you would do contention 1, leave some space, contention 2, leave some space. Okay, and so this is all the structure your paper needs to have. Okay, and the way that you actually have a good rebuttal is for the steps you actually take to fill in the gaps. And so this is why note taking is incredibly important. Earlier, when I was going over, what a second speaker needed to have, they needed to have a good memory to be able to constantly reference information, and they had to have good note-taking skills. And this is exactly why. As your opponent's first speaker is going up there rattling off all their information at 1,000,000 miles per hour, you have to be there. What's their first contention? Their first contention is pharmaceutical prices. Okay, so pharma prices. Okay, and now what you're going to do is you're going to record, 50% of all people pay for drugs. Okay, drugs cost $15 million. $15 million per person. Okay, now what's happening is, as you're writing this down, wait a minute, this fact does not seem correct. This is a little fishy. And guess what happens? While you were doing your research before this debate, you found out that this isn't right. It's actually $500 per person. And your opponents are just being big liars. And let's say you also, because if you don't have a source, you can't really give out this kind of information. So what you do is, when you are, taking your notes, you see a claim, and then you create your rebuttal while you are taking the notes. At least that's what I always did. So I would hear a claim, and then I would directly contest this. So drugs cost $15 million per person. That is wrong. It's actually $500 per person. ncbi.gov. Okay, don't look that up because that's not real. Well, the website is, but the actual fact isn't. But even then, okay, so we're going further down the list. All right, what else do we think they're saying? We think they say, America pays. Let's see, America pays like $400 per hour for patent control. Okay, once again, this isn't wrong. This isn't correct. Okay, this isn't correct. And guess what? Patent control, why would you have to pay for patent control? So you're going to call that out. Boom. Okay. I know, for example, a really good example. We're going to move away from pharma here. I'm going to keep giving examples, but it was there was one resolution I was doing which was about nuclear energy. Okay, so should we incentivize the production of nuclear reactors? A common argument that I would get is cyber attacks. Okay, we would people were saying that we would get cyber attacks on our nuclear reactors, and it would sabotage the structure of the United States because it would, cause a bunch of nuclear reactors to blow up. And so what happened was I had this piece of information that I frequently referenced, and every time somebody said cyber attack a nuclear reactor, you know what I would do? I would say, no, that is wrong. Nuclear reactors are analog and cannot be triggered remotely. And you know what would happen is I would cite this source and it would shut down a big part of their argument. That is how you structure a rebuttal in the works. So you take notes very quickly, so you're, taking notes. Oh, guess what happens? This claim is arguable. Now you're going to list your rebuttal. So rebuttal. Okay, taking notes. Even if you don't have a rebuttal for something, you still want to be taking the notes, because what's going to happen is this information will be very, very important in the future because it gives you more stuff to work with. It allows you to understand more about your opponent's case, and the more you understand about your opponent's case, the easier it is to contest it. The easier it is to say, no, you're wrong, I can prove it, and here is how. Okay, so make sure you are constantly taking notes. Keep in mind you will miss stuff. So when taking notes, you have to make sure that you only record the important stuff, because like I said in my previous video, when making a first speech, you want to have roughly 50% of it as fluff. Okay? Now, when taking notes, you kind of want to record some of that fluff because that fluff can still make a semi-arguable claim, but you mainly want to write down the evidence. You want to make sure that you are recording everything that your opponent is saying that can actually be argued. If you are not taking notes on that, and if you happen to miss something, quickly, let's say they mention it in rebuttal, quickly just jot that down. Otherwise, it will be significantly harder to win a round if you have very, very lackluster rebuttals. Okay, rebuttals are all in taking the notes, and they're all in having that archive of background information in order to just contest any piece of evidence your opponent could pull out. And I will go into that in my next video. But right now, I'm going to focus. So I focused on the taking notes. Now I'm going to talk about how to actually prolong your rebuttal. And this is very simple. Okay, so when giving a first speech, okay, you have to be very quick with how you talk. Okay, so you have to speak very, very rapidly. And you have to be very aggressive. Okay, you're speaking at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and you're getting in my face with every single word. You are impossible to counter as a first speaker simply because you are speaking so aggressively. Second speakers completely flip the script. Second speeches, okay, you talk slowly. I'm just your pal, My buddy over here, he's the bad cop. You can hate him all you want. I'm the one that's right here. I'm just talking about, this case. My side's right. I'm just going to sit you down, and we're going to have a civilized talk. So you have to just talk normally. Okay, you don't have to get all up in their face because the judge doesn't want that. The judge already had 4 minutes of getting screamed at by your first speaker, so why 4 more? You just kind of talk normally. Your judge is just a person, and if they could hear every single word you say, it's better for you, because the rebuttal, that's where you actually begin to argue. And so it's important that your judge understand everything, because if they don't, well, guess what? That's an important part of your speech. That's an important part of your actual debate that the judge just completely overlooks because you're being too much of a douchebag. So you talk normally, you talk slow, you talk calmly. Okay, you're not here to scream in their face. You're here to just be a pal. You're explaining to me calmly why I win. Simple. Now what you're going to do is you talk normally, and you have to make sure that you have good pacing with your speech. So good speech pacing. Okay, so if you do impromptu a lot, which it is, if you are a second speaker, practice impromptu. Practice a lot, because what happens is you will be able to give speeches so much better. You just have yawning. Oh man, if you just have a good speech pacing, you understand how to structure your speech on the fly, you can talk normally so you can think more, then what's going to happen is you structure your rebuttal. Typically, so both sides are allowed for 2 minutes of prep time. I did not mention this when I was going over the structure of the debate. That was my bad. I completely overlooked it. But you usually want to spend a little bit of time prepping before your rebuttal, simply because that is how you structure it out. So when you're doing the rebuttal, what I would do is I would write down maybe 5 words at most. Okay, so I would do, let's say, cyber attack reactors. Okay, then we've got nuclear efficiency. I misspelled efficiency, whatever. Safety, alright, just stuff like this. And so what's happening is as I'm glancing down at my paper after I'm trying to just get an understanding of where I'm at, I just look down, whoop-de-doo, now I know where I'm at, now I know what I'm talking about. I finished talking about cyber attack reactors, okay, so now what am I talking about? I'm completely lost. I look down at my paper, nuclear efficiency, okay, so now I can just kind of slow it down again, just give out a little bit of just riff it out. Okay, why nuclear efficiency? Nuclear energy is the most efficient of all, alternative energy sources. It's incredibly, it produces no emissions, stuff like that. You're just going to talk very, very normally, okay? You're just having a casual conversation with your grandma. Okay, that's exactly how you have to talk to the judge. You just don't want to be a soft. And so that's pretty much all there is to rebuttal. It's by far the most fun. It is very high risk, low reward though. First speakers will typically dominate in terms of actually pushing the argument out because they're the ones with all the information. The rebuttal's just kind of there to prolong the debate. It's still necessary, but a bad rebuttal and a good rebuttal, they're not going to go as far as a bad constructive and a good constructive. Now, I'm not saying be deliberately awful at your rebuttals because you want to. I'm saying that if you're really, really bad at rebuttals, it's not as bad as being really, really bad at first speaking. So, like I said, high risk, low reward. It's still the most fun, and personally, I love second speaker just because the rebuttal is so satisfying to pull off. But that's going to be it for this one. I am going to be going over. What did I say I was going to be going over? Something. I'll be going over something next.